Office Max investing in the way that it has with a brand new distribution centre behind us. It's been pretty special to see. Obviously this week with the interest rate cut announced, that's been going to be very positive for homeowners, but also for businesses wanting to invest in more plant capital and equipment and expand their companies and create more high-paying jobs. You would have also seen the Fonterra announcement of the sale of its consumer goods business, and of course that'll put another $3.2 billion into rural New Zealand as well. So with that, happy to take your questions.
Have you seen the latest Public Health Advisory Committee report? It called for a wealth tax and a cross-party focus on well-being and says it's needed to support the system.
I haven't seen the detail of the report. I'm aware that it has been something just been issued. I'd just say a wealth tax is completely the wrong answer for New Zealand. New Zealand does not need wealth taxes, inheritance taxes or capital gains taxes. You've heard Chris Hitkin say that he's not sure he's going to rule it out on a family home, and the reality is New Zealand at this part, what we need to do is focus on growing the economy so that we can improve our productivity and then lift living standards for all, and that's really the focus of this government.
Just on Auckland businesses, there are some that are really struggling right now. Has the government put any more thought into short-term stimulus for Auckland?
Yeah, look, there's no doubt about it. We've got a two-speed recovery going on. You're seeing rural New Zealand, South Island, primary industry sectors doing incredibly well, but certainly in Auckland and Wellington, much, much tougher. We've put work in place like the Investment Boost program to incentivise manufacturing businesses to invest in their businesses. We've got Fast Track, obviously, with the ports announcement that's come through yesterday, which is fantastic. It's a $200 million project, lots of jobs that came through in 6 months rather than the 5 years that it normally would be. So we are conscious of Auckland and we're conscious of Wellington and our big cities that are doing it much tougher. We're open to doing more, but what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're doing things that are common sense and are practical, and we'll continue to revisit it every month as we have been.
Just on the Auckland expansion, how might that grow?
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, it's a project that was going to take 5 years, I was advised, under the old RMA. It's something that's taken 6 months under the new Fast Track legislation. The work is starting immediately, which is brilliant. It's a $200 million project. That, of course, is opportunities for tradies and subcontractors, which is what the economic activity we need to stimulate in Auckland is all about. And you're seeing that also across the CRL as that comes to fruition, and some of the rule changes that we made again in the last week to accelerate denser developments above transport hubs and transport stations on the CRL line. All of that creates jobs, it creates activity, which is good for the city.
We see that things are getting better, but the RBNZ's monetary statement said highlighted rising costs, rising inflation, soft labour market, and soft global conditions. Are you spinning it to the public?
No, if you look at the RBNZ report, which I encourage everybody to look at, actually yes, there's no doubt about it. We had a very good end of last year. We had a very good start to this year. We had Liberation Day hit us in April, and that was a real loss and a knock to confidence and sentiment around the world, but also here in New Zealand. But the RBNZ reports and forecasts are saying, look, we're expecting good growth growth that returning in Q3, and then accelerated growth starting to happen in the back end of the last quarter of this year. Obviously, there's a cut that's come out this week. There's 2 more opportunities for further cuts between now and the end of the year, and they're plotting out that course pretty strongly. So they're still very committed to the fact that the forecast is 2.7% growth averaged over the next few years, the 240,000 jobs that we'll create off the back of that. So we're really hitting the peak unemployment period. Unemployment will start to trend back as the forecasters are all forecasting.
Israel's been intensifying attacks on Gaza. What's New Zealand's position?
Oh, it's utterly unacceptable. There's 2 real concerns there. The first is that Israel going into Gaza City, into Gaza where 90% of it has been destroyed, where there is 1 million people sitting in Gaza City that have got nowhere to go, is an military action and the forced displacement of the Gazan people is utterly unacceptable. And the second thing I'd say is also very concerning overnight is that we're seeing very extremist statements from ministers that we have actually issued travel bans. The Minister of Foreign Affairs issued travel bans back in June, but we're now seeing settlements taking place in the West Bank, and settlement activity there is illegal under international law, and New Zealand has opposed it for a long period of time. And you're seeing now very public statements coming out from Israeli ministers saying they are wanting to extinguish the pathway to a 2-state solution. Well, That is something that New Zealand and all countries signed up for back in 1947, but it's very concerning, and it's not too late for Israel to pull out of those settlements and pull out of that military action in Gaza as well.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said it's shameful the way Western leaders are fighting to pressure, including recognising Palestine. Do you have any response to this?
Well, our view is very clear. When you are going into Gaza and Gaza City in the way that Israel is doing now over the last 48 hours, that is actually about the forced displacement of a people, which is utterly unacceptable under international law. The other concerning part is the expansion of illegal settlements, which we have opposed for a long period of time, because in doing that you're hearing statements now from some of those extremist ministers saying they are deliberately wanting to extinguish the pathway to a two-state solution. When in 1947, with the formation of a state of Israel, it was envisaged a state of Palestine would coexist. Those two states would exist to give each other peace and security and stability. And this military action, these illegal settlements, none of that is helping the case. And it's not ultimately serving Israel's long-term interests and keeping them safe either.
On defence, there was a big spending announcement yesterday. Why prioritise aircraft?
Well, that was part of our defence capability plan that we announced when we announced our step up in spending, but we've laid out a 15-year roadmap of defence investment so we can build our capability back. Certainly the commitment around the 5 marine helicopters, the 2 transport aircraft are the first things that was as planned. There's nothing unusual in the choice of those projects. They were very much on the DCP plan. Yeah.
On your gene tech bill,
Yes, ma'am.
are you concerned New Zealand First will kill it?
Oh, no, not at all. It's a very complicated piece of legislation. We're just taking a bit more time through select committee process to make sure we get that drafted in the right way. As you know, we're following many other countries. We've got a very conservative position around gene tech. We've started with the Australian work in particular, but I want to get it right rather than do it fast. So, no, coalition commitment agreement, no problems there. It's just genuinely trying to get this legislation straight.
There is very little support for it though around the select committee table. Are you going to need to go back to scratch and redraft it from again?
No. We've got, there's big commitment here on both sides around, you've seen former chief science advisors come out and say New Zealand really does need to get with the 21st century and get this piece of legislation and get the gene tech regulator set up. And it's just complicated work, and it's important we get it right so we don't make any mistakes.
Are there enough safeguards on this bill?
Yes, there are, and we've modelled it on. There's probably 40 countries around the world that have much more advanced, have embraced gene tech for a long period of time. We're very much coming to the table very last minute and late, and so we've got the benefit of countries that are very conservative countries, from Japan through to European countries through to what we've seen in Australia. We just want to make sure that what we design here in New Zealand is conservative, it's fit for purpose, and importantly, it does unlock the value that sits in the gene tech sector and what that means for healthcare outcomes as well as emissions reductions for New Zealanders.
What do you make of Labour's mixed messages on the gang patch ban? Who do you trust in this situation?
Well, it's classic Labour, isn't it? I mean, Chris Hipkins said no, he'd keep the ban. Penny Henare said no, he won't. Then you've had Carmel Sepuloni saying yes, we will. So they're all over the place on a very simple issue, which is, the gang patch ban has been very effective. It's lowered the profile of gangs around New Zealand. We've had 28,000 less victims of serious violent crime, and it's also enabled our police to go after illegal guns and illegal drugs. So it's a no-brainer. And to see Labor vacillating and at 6s, and 7s and all at sea on it, it's a bit like what we saw on public-private partnerships. It's what we're seeing here on gang patches. It's what we're seeing with respect to whether they want a wealth tax, inheritance tax, capital gains tax. The same conversation that's going on inside their party.
Do you want house prices to rise?
Yeah, we want to see house prices rise consistently, but what we don't want to see is the unsustainable increase in house prices which we saw, where we saw house prices go up 30-35% in a single year. That is not sustainable, and what we want to see is good, consistent levels of house price growth and appreciation. We obviously want, and you're seeing that across the system where we've got a lot of a rework of the planning legislation in New Zealand so we can build more houses and put more supply of houses into the market. You've seen rentals come down slightly under our government versus being up almost $200 per week under the previous one. You're seeing us take 6,000 people off the State House wait list now, which is fantastic news after it quadrupled. And you've seen us move people out of emergency accommodation. So in all aspects of the housing market, we need to build more houses. We want to just see a much more steady, appropriate, modest increase in values over time.
If houses increase in price, do you worry about that impact on productivity? Because I think you might have said in the past, we don't get rich selling houses to each other.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem was the house price inflation you saw was incredibly unsustainable. I think house prices went up over 50% in that previous administration. You saw a 30% increase in a single year. That is just not realistic. It's not sustainable. It's not appropriate. What we want to see is just consistent, modest growth in house values over time. Again, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand report suggests that that's the pathway that we're on. But what we don't want to see is the unsustainable 30% increases in values which we've seen in the past.
Prime Minister, we've seen Sawmill close this week, sincere downsizing. How long can you, nearly 2 years into this term, how long can you keep blaming the previous government for the state of the economy?
Well, it's just making sure people understand how we've got to where we've got to. We're doing it tough right now because unemployment's the last thing that happens when you run inflation out, when you run spending up, when you run interest rates up, and you put the economy into recession. We've got spending under control, we've got inflation down, we've got interest rates coming down, we've got growth back in the economy, and as you know from the forecasts, unemployment's peaking right now. It's incredibly tragic across the country when you see businesses having to shut down or to downsize as a result of economic impacts. We've seen it with respect to mills up and down this country that rely on gas supplies because of the oil and gas ban that happened as well. That meant that people lost their jobs. So unless you're joining things up and thinking through the system and how you can improve it and build out and have a proper economic plan, it causes huge pain and suffering for New Zealanders. So I acknowledge, as I said, it's a two-speed recovery. If you're in the South Island rural communities, primary industries, people are feeling the real effects of positive growth, which is great. But if you're in our cities, it's still a tough time. That's why we've got to stick to the plan, but we've also got to keep doing sensible things like the policy initiatives that we've put in place to encourage more investment, more growth, more jobs.
And you mentioned Fonterra earlier. Is it sad though that the iconic New Zealand company is now in French hands? No, not at all. Fonterra's strategy is about business to business. Many of us have been off overseas and we've seen the work that they do selling their products into, say, Korean bakers. It's a much larger market than trying to sell consumer branded goods. It's going to a very good purchaser of the business, and importantly that money now gets returned back to the farming community. It's a $3.8 billion sale, $3.2 billion of it goes back to the farmer shareholders themselves. That is money that goes back into the local economies that then gets to be spent in those economies, and that has a big flow-on effect within the economy as well and good stimulus in the economy.
Simon Watts has refused to guarantee that local water done well will be less expensive for councils than free waters. Wasn't that kind of the point?
Well, the point is that if you look at an example here in Auckland, you saw Mayor Brown come out and say that he wanted to take rates up 24%. We put Watercare into a proper financial structure, made it its own independent entity, council controlled, local controlled, but also balance sheet separated from the council. All of a sudden rates went up 6% or something, 6 to 7%, and you also had a situation now where Watercare can plan out investment over the next 30 years because it has certainty, and the council got $800 million back. So we know there'll be investments in Three Waters, but this structure is the best way in which we can manage the investment that's needed in the years ahead. So we've got, councils have got up to the 1st of September. The Minister has been working with many of them. Many of them have come together in groupings under council-controlled organisations, which is excellent and our preferred way. But of course, the Minister needs to be reassured the assets are going to be managed and that the financial pathway is sustainable.
But it won't be cheap.
Well, again, he will. In many cases, setting up those structures will be cheaper than not setting up those structures. Absolutely.
China's foreign ministry has accused the NZHRL of spreading disinformation.
Sorry, can you say that again? Sorry.
China's foreign ministry has accused the NZHRL of spreading disinformation and unsubstantiated smears. Are you comfortable with those accusations?
I'm not sure what they're in reference to. Is there have you got any further context? Yeah, sorry about that. No, I just.
What's your reaction to Fonterra selling its consumer business to a French company for $4 million?
Look, I think it's good. I mean, I think personally Fonterra is in the business of selling to other businesses, and when I've seen them offshore, they're doing so well because they're selling, New Zealand products, dairy products into, as I said before, Korean bakers. They've added value to their products that they sell all around the world, ambient whipping cream into parts of Asian markets that, are new innovations that they can get much higher prices for, higher margins, and therefore better returns and more profitability back to their farmer shareholders, which is what it's all about. And the second thing is that, with the $3.8 billion sale, $3.2 billion of that's being returned to those shareholders, which of course are farmers that will spend that money across New Zealand, which is a good thing.
I think what the Chinese were referring to was the SIS making statements about foreign interference in New Zealand.
Oh, you mean their recent report that they've just sent out, the threat and the threat analysis?
Yeah. So does the government stand by that?
Oh, absolutely, we stand by it completely. Yep.
You've been posting about
Sorry?
You've been posting about digital.
Are you going to get one?
Well, I was going to ask, does the government have a general update on that or a timeline about when you might want that coming?
I think the legislation is just coming into the House this week to make that a reality, but it's just, again, in 2025, we want to make sure that we're hauling New Zealand into the 21st century. We think there's huge opportunities for a lot more digitalisation across government, but across the way that the New Zealand public deal with government, and I think digital driver's licences are just a common sense thing. When we're all using digital wallets to buy products and services across the country, it's a good thing. So I don't have exact timing, but I know that legislation has to go into the House, and I think that's just kicked off this week. So,
Prime Minister, how are Todd McRae's discussions in the US going? Is the tariff reduction entry likely to pass at all?
No, as I've said up front, the President's very fixed in his views that if you're running a surplus with the US, then everyone gets the minimum 15%. If you run a deficit, you get the minimum 10%. So I don't think we should expect any change in that regard. But having said all of that, we have a very positive, constructive relationship with the US administration. This has been a series. He was invited to America by his counterpart, Jamison Greer, and so it's just about us maintaining our relationship with the Americans, obviously raising these issues and concerns, but actually continuing to work together positively and constructively as we have been. Yeah.
Sorry, Prime Minister, go ahead and say everyone at the SIS, just through from Zane Gray said in the new report that says China is committing foreign interference in New Zealand.
I know what you mean now, yes. So, so that is, I stand by that statement, and we completely stand by it. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, team. Appreciate the day. Have a good weekend.